Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're almost at our celebration this evening. There's going to be a little celebration, award-giving celebration for those devotees that have been very much involved in reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Are you all part of a Bhagavatam reading group? No. Okay, great. Okay. So this evening, for those that have completed a certain amount of the reading program, okay. That was just to make sure you don't fall asleep. Everybody's awake now, okay. For some months, this whole project has been going on of persons receiving Bhagavatam in their home, and then collectively different groups reading Bhagavatam, going through, discussing, immersing themselves in this profound and elevating literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. So in build-up for that celebration this evening, we've been going through sections by section, kind of like an overview, or as it says here, flow. Not all the details, obviously, but some of the main steps of the unfolding of the message of the Bhagavatam. And we're in session 6 now. Yesterday we completed the first half, chapters 1 through 19 of Canto 3. So rather than review what we did, because what's coming up here now is a whole lot, chapters 20 through 33. And in this section, most of you, if not all of you, know who is Kapiladev, the propounder of the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is an understanding of categories of matter, categories of spirit. We belong to the category of spirit, not matter. And then focusing on our identity as spirit, then the Supreme Spirit, and our relationship with the Supreme Spirit in the form of devotional service. There's sequences. Sankhya philosophy is not just an abstract ideology or philosophical construct. It's a process of bringing one to the stage of fully understanding and then immersion in service to the Supreme. So that's the Kapiladev section, and it comes after the, what comes before that, we'll see, ideal family life. It should be ideal, right? An ideal family life. Huh? Yeah. So, let's begin with chapter 20. This section is a discussion between Vidura. You all know who Vidura is. Vidura? The brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Vidura, son of Vyasadeva, and part of the royal family. So Vidura, after being insulted by Duryodhana, he went on pilgrimage for his purification from being in that contaminated situation with Duryodhana and others. And after 34 years of pilgrimage, he ended up meeting with Maitreya. There's a long story of how that came about, but he met with Maitreya. And so there was this mutual appreciation. Maitreya is very learned. He heard the whole of Krishna's teachings to Uddhava firsthand. He was present for that discourse. And then Krishna told Maitreya, very soon, Vidura is going to come, and I would like you to instruct him as I have instructed you. So Maitreya was very qualified, and Vidura met him, and he began to make some inquiries. And among the long list of inquiries, we're going to hear some more, long list of inquiries, but it started with the process of creation. And in the process of creation, there's two. There's what Vishnu does for creation, there's what Brahma does for creation. Vishnu's creation is called Sarga, Brahma's creation is Visarga. He takes the ingredients and everything, the plan and creative impetus and self-realization and everything, and he starts to build the universe. He's not really the creator, he's like an engineer, chief engineer. So there was that discussion, and it's very, involved. And now he wants, starting with chapter 20, he wants further, could you explain further about this Sarga Visarga, which we're not going to go into the details because it's very complicated. And then after there's this Sarga, what Brahma creates, then how did the universe get filled up? There's the planets, the place of residence for these personalities, but you have to populate the universe. So he starts asking about that in chapter 20. And among those that are generated from the body of Brahma directly is the first of the Manus. The first of the Manus' name is Swayambhuva. So he asks specifically about the dynasty of Swayambhuva Manu. What did he do? And the dynasty members included were the sons Priyavrata and Uttanapada. There were 3 daughters and 2 sons. Priyavrata and Uttanapada were the sons, and the 3 daughters included Devahuti. There's a whole long discussion about Devahuti coming, this whole second half of 3rd canto. But there were also 2 sisters named Prasuti and Akuti, sounding like names. And they became wives of the Prajapati Ruchi and the Prajapati Daksha. So there's not a lot said about them. It's just there's mention because it's one of his questions. And then there's a lot said about Devahuti and Kardama. So in this chapter 20, we hear about Kardama Muni being one of the direct born from the body of Brahma sons, Kardama Muni. He was instructed by Brahma because previously we heard earlier in this canto, the firstborn from the body of Brahma was the 4 Kumaras. And when they were requested, the answer was, no thanks. Dad, we don't want to have family life entanglement. We'd like to remain brahmacharis. Thank you. And after they refused, then the great sages, Sapta Rishis, were born from the body of Brahma. Specifically, it's mentioned that Brahma asked Kardama Muni to assist him as a Prajapati, filling up the universe. So to fulfill that request, it's the first of the 4 yugas, Satya Yuga, where the process of achieving spiritual perfection is dhyan, or meditation. So he went to the forest to do meditation for a mere 10,000 years. It's a long time to meditate. But the age of life during Satya Yuga is a duration of 100,000 years, and each successive yuga diminishes by a factor of 10. 100,000, 10,000, 1,100. Life expectancy in Kali Yuga reaches up to 100. Some people a little more, but average. So it's like going to do meditation for 10 years. Go into the forest and do meditation for 10 years. Only it's such a yuga, so it's austerities and meditation for 10,000 years. And he wasn't just doing meditation, he was a devotee. And he had a relationship with the Supreme Lord as in parental affection. Parental affection. Vatsalya rasa. So that Lord Vishnu knew his meditation was a form of devotional expression. In trance, Lord Vishnu, very pleased, descended, as you see in the painting, standing on the back of Garuda with his forearms, and Garuda hovering above and flapping his arms gently so the Lord in Kardama could have a conversation. Kardama prostrated himself before the Lord, offered wonderful prayers. Nice description of his prayers. There's another nice painting of Lord Vishnu descending personally to give his audience to Kardama. There's a description of his form, in case you wanted to know what does God look like. Here's a description, some verses. A golden streak on his chest, that's a Srivatsa. And the famous Kaustubha gem suspended from his neck. He stood in the air with his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. Nice painting. Then he expresses the qualification of Kardama, why he came. He was very pleased with his 10,000 years of austerity. All of this was being done just at the request of his father to produce good offspring, praja. But he had to prepare himself to do service like that, good praja. It's easy to produce offspring, but one needs purification to do such a service as Brahma was asking. So he was preparing himself. And all of this was done just at the request of his father. Please assist me. So it was yes. Then prepare himself. So here's some of his prayers. There's another nice painting. There's Lord Vishnu standing on Garuda and Kardama folding his palms and offering prayers. My eyes have become successful by seeing you. Advanced yogis practice yoga for many births to see your form. Here's one of the verses from this chapter. Your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane nescience. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain some trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. Nice. Here's a painting that illustrates just the last part. My Lord, You are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. Persons that want something temporary, limited and temporary. According to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says people that want something limited and temporary, their intelligence is very weak. And commonly those that want something limited and temporary, they go to those who quickly dispense something limited and temporary, the devatas. And they have different departments of what they dispense. And the whole section of the Vedas called Karma Kanda is sacrifices for achieving this and that and the other, limited and temporary. But Vishnu is very kind. He dispenses for them as well. And he humbly says, Kardama says, I'm also like them, worshiping you with a request. His request is to marry a girl of like disposition. And his reason is he wants to assist his father, Brahma. It's not just some lusty request. It's a service request. However, persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs, and who have taken shelter of the umbrella of your lotus feet, by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities and activities in discussions with one another, can be freed from the primary necessities of the material body. Parasparam tavad guna vada siddhu, so forth. So he is such a person. He is likening himself to a materialist, but he's not. He's highly qualified, not a materialist. So his mind is fixed upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. And although he's not requiring it because he's already transcendentally, he's going to have the son. The Supreme Lord is his son, so he's not just one of the fellows. He's very elevated, but he's likening himself to one who is captured by the temporary, and he's seeking to be picked up from the temporary, allurement for the temporary. I continuously offer my respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet, which are worthy to take shelter, because you shower all benedictions on the insignificant. And he's considering himself, I'm most insignificant, I'm eligible for your mercy. To give all living entities detachment from fruitive activity by realizing you have expanded these material worlds by your own energy. Nice prayers, there's more. But we're still in chapter 21. And after he speaks, Lord Vishnu, who is not easy to see, is not only going to make his form visible, but he's going to speak. And here's what the Lord says. You requested a wife, no problem. It's already arranged. And devotees' desires are never frustrated. In fact, Swayambhuva Manu will come the day after tomorrow and deliver your future wife. It's like pretty good marriage arrangement. And all you have to do is say yes. You don't have to do what people normally do. 2 more days, just hang on, and Swayambhuva Manu is going to come to you. You don't have to do anything. He'll come to you. She will be just suitable for you. She is of nature like you. She will bring forth 9 daughters, because this is the praja. From these 9 daughters, the 9 daughters were here later, but they were given to other sons of Brahma, and they became the wives of the Prajapatis that populated the universe in very mystical ways, in different species of life. In my plenary portion, I will become your son. So that's very nice. And he was very grateful. So Kardama, when he just, after Lord Vishnu left, he remained at the bank of, according to the Bhagavatam, Bindu Sarovar. Bindu Sarovar. There's many Bindu Sarovars in India, right? I mean, you're going to see. Well, here's a photograph of one that's in Gujarat, Siddhapur, Gujarat, and there's other Bindu Sarovars. There's one that I'm most familiar with is in Jagannath Puri. But whichever this Bindu Sarovar was, he stayed there. The holy lake, Bindu Sarovar, with its waters from Saraswati River, was not only auspicious, but as sweet as nectar. So he waited. Here's Lord Vishnu writing on Garuda. It was called Bindu Sarovar because drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. Now, Kardama was not exactly seeking protection. He was seeking fulfilling the instruction of his father, but of course, the Lord's shelter at his lotus feet. So, sure enough, 2 days later, Swayambhuva Manu arrived. And Swayambhuva Manu arrived with his daughter, Devahuti. And here's a nice painting of that. There's Kardama Muni on the left, and there's Swayambhuva Manu with two daughters, although I don't know who the second one was, but one of them was Devahuti. And there's a really nice exchange. Really nice exchange. It's called Brahmakarya, where the first one to speak was the king, or Swayambhuva Manu, speaking to the Brahmana, describing his appreciation for the exalted qualities of Kardama Muni. And he spoke glorification of Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni spoke words of appreciation for Swayambhuva Manu. And when persons are elevated, it's not like, hey, I'm a Brahmin, and hey, I'm the king. They're just appreciating the elevated quality and characteristics and service of one another. It's very nice. Cultured people know how to do that. Uncultured people, something else happens. So Manu is received with warm welcome and words of glorification, gentle, respectful, and appropriate exchange between the two, Kardama and Manu. Kardama accepted Devahuti. He had one condition, reasonable condition, a standard condition. The condition is when there is a son who becomes old enough to take care of your daughter, then I want to depart from family life and go back to meditation and so forth, and austerities. I will stay only until birth of offspring. So this is the idea in chapter 22. So Manu agrees to that condition, and he speaks some very nice things about his daughter. Even there hasn't been like a formal introduction, it's just kind of a general introduction. So here's what he says to Kardama, appreciating Kardama's qualification. Now comes appreciation of Devahuti. My daughter is the sister of Priyavrata and Uttanapada. It's traditional in Vedic culture. The family line of both are identified. Of course, Kardama is pretty short. It's just he's the son of Brahma. But Swayambhuva Manu had two sons, Uttanapada and Priyavrata. She's seeking a suitable husband in terms of age, character, and good qualities. In other words, expressing the criterion of character for the selection of a suitable spouse. The source of her desire to marry you was hearing about you from Narada Muni, celebrated matchmaker. What? He's a sannyasi. Was he doing matchmaking? He did it more than once. How did Rukmini know about Krishna? Narada Muni. Narada Muni told Rukmini qualities of Krishna. That was it. She gave her heart to Krishna. There's other examples. So it's not like he just understands the will of the Lord and he does the will of the Lord without any attachment to, hey, I'm a sannyasi, I can't do this. He's just a servant, very transcendental servant. So she heard about Kardama. Now Kardama is a Brahmin, and she's the princess, the daughter of a Kshatriya. But it's appropriate for the Brahmana to marry a Kshatriya's daughter. So that's what happened. She fixed her mind on you after hearing. It was not something external, she just heard. And trusted, of course, Narada's descriptions and his evaluation of everything. And it wasn't based upon he's handsome and he's got a PhD or something like that. Got a good job and he can take care of you. It was just hearing his qualification, not something external. And even though she was the daughter of the emperor, she desired to just go and stay in the forest with you and serve you in a very humble way. So this is, it's a detail, but it's an important lesson. Coming from this third canto is one has to be very thoughtful, criterion-wise, as to selection of ashram and selection of the person who you're going to spend your life with. So after their marriage, there's nice glorification of Devahuti. Already some glories of Devahuti have been presented. Here's some more. She was very chaste. The Sanskrit terms are used. She was willing to accept difficulties, up to even sati. Her whole lifestyle was changed. She was used to palace life, used to opulence and comforts and everything nice. And she's going to go live in the forest, and she has no comforts and do austerities and serve her husband in that way. And eventually she became kind of skinny, and she didn't have nice clothing and ornaments. Her hair became matted and the whole thing. But she was happy being in that position of service. She had the capacity, because she's a qualified lady, to understand the desires of her husband, and even without being asked, she just was able to fulfill it. It gives the Sanskrit for these qualities. She had great love and was loved. There was an intimacy in their relationship, but not the worldly kind of intimacy, but a spiritual kind of loving service intimacy. Her mind and body were pure. She had great respect and a very worthy person to receive her respect, Kardama. Her senses were controlled. Her speaking was very pleasant, vacha madhurya. She gave up the lower qualities, pride, envy, greed, all sinful activities, all vanity gone. There's a whole list describing her qualities. And working sanely and diligently. I mean, not in contrast. It's not simply to say she wasn't insane, but she was quite grounded and practical and thoughtful, and she carried out her duties like that. And she did that. Remember, Kardama was in the forest for 10,000 years before this all happened. Now they were living together in the forest, husband and wife. The marriage is right there in the forest, kind of a different marriage than, they didn't go back to Swayambhuvamandu's palace and have a marriage. I mean, commonly that's what it would done. The wedding would happen at the girl's place, and the girl would then go to the husband's place. It's right there in the forest. And they lived together, doing austerities for, again, thousands of years. It's Satya Yuga. And she, as described, she became lean and thin and so forth. And at a certain point, Kardama expressed his great appreciation for her quality, her character, and how she had served him, and he wanted to reciprocate in some way. So she was very pleased hearing these kind words, and so she made a very simple request. Her request was to have a child. Natural for husband and wife wanting to have a child. So their living situation was out in the forest. So what he did was, by his mystic power, he created this flying mystical city, a city with parks and tall buildings and lakes and everything. An aerial mansion is called, but it's like a city. Roads and airplanes bedecked with jewels, flags, artistic work, fabrics, beds, couches, artistic walls, floors, doors, domes, canopies, you name it. Birds, live and artificial birds, pleasure grounds, parks. Wow. And he didn't say any mantra, he just like bhavati. It just manifest. And even Kardama was astonished. So he was a mystic, he was a meditator, and performed austerities, super excellent austerities. He was a pure devotee in parental affection with the Lord, with Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu became his son. And he was a mystic. He was a highly qualified personality. The next thing after this aerial mansion, I mean, pretty amazing, was manifest. She, Devahuti, was immersed in the Bindu Sarovar, and suddenly her whole body turned, exquisitely beautiful again, with ornaments, and maid servants were there to assist her in making her hair nice again and decorating her and the whole thing. And then there's this description that the two traveled throughout the universe. They went sightseeing here and there. Let's go on vacation. They didn't go to Disneyland, and they didn't go to Niagara Falls. They went to, the heavenly planets and all over the universe. And they became very celebrated personalities amongst these other places. And then it was time for children. And so there were 9 daughters. And while Devahuti was pregnant with her 10th child, who was Lord Kapila, Lord Brahma personally came. What you don't see in this painting is what's over there on the left side of the painting. It's Lord Brahma comes. And he's very pleased. He's very pleased with Kardama, very pleased with Devahuti, the daughter of Swayambhuvamandu, so she's like his granddaughter, and Kardama is his son. And he's very much appreciating the service that they have rendered, the purity with which they have rendered it. And then he makes a decision about who these 9 daughters should marry. And he assigns different daughters to different sages to assist in the Prajapati program, to populate the universe with good praja, and even different species. It's described later. So that's settled up, and he confirms that the child in the womb of Devahuti is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Before he's born, before Kapiladev is born, it was told by Lord Vishnu, now it's being confirmed by Brahma. So he's celebrated before he takes his birth. And he takes his birth. Kapiladev, the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, or it's referred to in the scriptures as Devahuti Putra, the son of Devahuti. Because there's another Kapila, without going into it, not an atheist Kapila, not Devahuti Putra Kapila. He was not an atheist. So after some time, as he grew, the daughters are gone, he grew, he became mature in age, and his father, Kardama, came to him in a secluded place, expressed his appreciation and glorification, etc. Because remember, Kardama already made wonderful prayers to Lord Vishnu, and he knows that Lord Vishnu is his son, or his son is Lord Vishnu. So knowing all that, he glorifies him appropriately, and then kind of in a mysterious way, mysterious because Lord Vishnu has become his son, now he's going to go to the forest to worship Vishnu. But he's his son. Why does he have to go to the forest to worship Vishnu when he has Vishnu as his son? And the answer is kind of esoteric, but he wanted to show by example. When your family life becomes at a certain stage, you will retire from family life. When there's an elder son that can take care of your wife, he was setting the standard for Vedic culture. And after hearing everything, Kapiladev consents. So that ends chapter 24. So we've covered 20 through 24. And here's a little map or a drawing that shows these verses, the chapters, and a little summary. After creating demigod sages and the first Manu, Lord Brahma requests Kardama Muni to help expand the population. Kardama asks Lord Vishnu for a wife, then marries Devahuti and creates a celestial mansion for her. He fathers Kapila Muni and 9 daughters, who marry great sages and help create living entities. So the paintings in this image show each of those, and then there you see up the top is 24. That's his approach to Kapiladev to depart from this world, to depart from home. And the one below that, that's the aerial mansion up there. The one below that is Swayambhuva Manu introducing his daughter to Kapila. Down below that is Lord Vishnu coming on the back of Garuda, and so forth. Brahma producing what he produced, requesting Kardama. So that's the basic storyline. There's lots of cultural points. As you know, this heading was the ideal family life. There's steps. The steps don't always match reality, or the ideal doesn't always match reality, but it's painting a very nice picture of an ideal Vedic combination. So now we're ready for the next section, starting with chapter 25. It's going to go to chapter 33. It's a very substantial section of the Bhagavatam. When Devahuti requests Kapila to deliver her from her, so after Karnama's gone, what's Devahuti feeling? He hasn't died, but he's departed home, and she's with him for how long? Thousands of years. And he's a wonderful, amazing personality, and he's gone. So she's feeling separation. And so she sits with her son, and knowing that he is the personality of Godhead, she requests Kapila to deliver her from her great fear of material existence. Kapila explains Sankhya Yoga, which begins by transferring one's attachments from matter to the association of pure devotees, Sadhu-Sanga. One can quickly advance on the path from Shraddha to Prema by attentively hearing and discussing the Lord's activities. Shraddha is the beginning of the stage of devotional life, faith. And as that progresses, that faith matures, it becomes matured in the form of prema, love of God, service to God in that state of consciousness. So the way that this is structured is we're going to focus on questions and answers, because that's like the Vedic method. Here's the first question. So her first question is, please dispel my illusion. Illusion is rooted in A and B. A is a misconception of self, and B is the misconception of mind. And the mind is connected to self. What I think is mine is connected to who I think I am. In other words, if I think I'm this body, then what's mine is what comes from this body. Very logical. And what comes from this body is my work. And so the fruits of work are mine. And I use the fruits of work for my enjoyment. That's material life, I and mine. Or my house, my family, my bank balance, my taxes, my credit card, and my bills, and my debitors and my creditors, and so all of those things, I and mine, aham and mama. It's spoken of again and again and again in the Bhagavatam, because it's a root of illusory existence. She wants that dispelled. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feelings of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequential bodily relations. That's the I and mine. Nice painting, very nice painting. There's Kapila and his mother in a lower seat, looking up to her son, knowing he is the personality of Godhead. Explicitly, she says I'm covered by Maya, but it's your Maya, so you can remove it. Please remove it. And please give me the means to remove it. So this is chapter 25. And in this chapter 25, it's the process of removing the covering of Maya. Very relevant for all of us. And the main process that he refers to, he says, sure, the main process is bhakti. And the main access to bhakti is through bhaktas, those that are carrying bhakti in their heart. Then one can get bhakti. See, he gives this answer, Adhyatmika Yoga, yoga concerning the Atma. The yoga systems concerning the Atma, in succession, Sankhya, Ashtanga, and Bhakti Yoga. So he starts with Sankhya in the next chapter. This Adhyatmika Yoga, because you want to know how to overcome Maya, it gives not just overcome Maya, but the ultimate benefit for the living entity. It causes detachment from all material duality, because material duality has such things as happiness and distress. And what's beyond happiness and distress? It's the absolute. Here is the world of happy, it's light and dark, pleasure and pain, hot and cold, wet and dry, winter and summer season, honor, dishonor. In this world of duality, happiness and distress. So what's beyond the duality is the absolute realm. So he Kapiladev, is saying, I'll give you the teaching of how you can get to the absolute realm, beyond duality. And of all the different yoga systems, Bhakti Yoga is the superlative. Same thing it says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. So Bhakti Yoga is the best. How do you get it? There's several verses that are really important. So important that they're known as the Ashtaka, or 8 teachings that are sequential in this whole chapter that teach the how to get out of the illusory existence and enter into the realm of the absolutes. Okay. Every learned man knows very well that attachment to the material, it is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul. But that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. So attachment in and of itself is not the problem, it's what you're attached to. And if you're attached to the temporary, then you've got a problem. And if you're attached to the eternal, then you're free from problems. And the way to get attached to that, the eternal, is attachment to those who are attached to the eternal. Very simple. If you want to get warm, you go near fire. You get warm. If you want detachment from the temporary, associate with those who are detached from the temporary. And that's possible by attachment to the eternal. Sadhu-Sanga. So then Kapila gives long, nice description of what are the characteristics of a sadhu. How do I tell I've found one? So these are characteristics. They're tolerant, they're merciful, friendly to all living entities, no enemies, peaceful, abide by the scriptures. They're Sanskrit phrases. These are translations of those. Engage in staunch devotional service to the Lord. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections. Engage constantly in chanting and hearing about me, Kapiladev. And they do not suffer from material miseries. They're beyond the happiness and distress. Then in verse 24, therefore, my dear mother, you must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Pernicious means like detrimental, hurtful, harmful, pernicious. Your daughter's in the cabinet. She's having a good time. Hope she doesn't fall off the counter. Okay. That's 24. So it's an imperative. If you want this, you must do that. It's not optional. Many things can be, maybe this, maybe that, but this is not optional. It must be. Association with sadhus. Imperative. By the way, this photograph, it's the Mataji is one of Prabhupada's disciples, celebrated personality named Jamuna, celebrated in many ways, but one of those many ways was her singing. She was very, very, very qualified singer. Last time we were here, you helped her. You want to do it again? When I walked in the door, I asked her, do you remember me? She said, no. I said, I remember you. And she's a lovely little girl. She's playful. It's quite okay. Okay, so that's Jamuna over there on our left, to Prabhupada's right. And she was very fortunate to have Prabhupada's association as much as she did. Very, very faithful disciple. So, next, what's the best way to seek Sadhu-Sanga? And there's qualifications, we heard them. Now, how do you find one? And when you find one, what do you do? This is this Ashtaka. Very celebrated verse, 325:25. Satam prasangam avavirya samvidho bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata. Very celebrated verse. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. Bhavanti rit karna rasayana. You know, in Ayurveda they have medicines called rasayana. Something rasayana. So it's rasayana, it's like a medicine. Medicine is very pleasing to the ear and the heart. And it's mama virya, the power, the glory, the greatness of the personality of Godhead. That's the subject matter that's very pleasing to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation. Apavarga Vartmani. The Pavarga and Apavarga. Pavarga is the path of material existence. Apavarga is the path of transcendence. Apavarga Vartmani. It opens the path to transcendental life. Shraddha, Ratir, Bhaktir, Anukramishati, step by step, Anukramishati, Krama, step, Anukramishati, step by step, starting with faith, then Rati, and Bhakti, pure devotional service. Notice Prabhupada's translation. He says at the end, then real devotion and devotional service begin. What's that? I thought devotional service can be like even at the beginning stage. And devotional service at the beginning stage is beginning stage. But when it matures, then it's pure devotional service. So this is the method to come to that pure devotional service. So what does that look like? What do you do when there's real devotional service? Explanation. Constantly engage in devotional service, in the association of devotees. That's a photograph of Sankirtan, congregational chanting. But it doesn't have to be congregational chanting, it can be any other kinds of service. Depicting here different services that different devotees do. Or here's a little cartoon illustration. Someone's cooking in the kitchen, thinking of Krishna. And then after cooking, they're offering a garland and performing arti for Krishna. And then down in the bottom right is taking Krishna Prasadam, thinking of Krishna. So these are activities where the mind is absorbed in Krishna. Such a person gains distaste for sense gratification both in this world and in the next by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. We have this phrase, as you see on the screen here, be in the world but not of the world. So materialists, you're in the world and you're, that's it. But there's transcendental life as you're in the world, but your consciousness is elsewhere, not of the world. You perform your duties, like it says in Bhagavad Gita, perform your prescribed duties, and always think of me. Mama nusmara, in Arjuna's case, yudhya cha. Yudhya, fight. Perform prescribed duties, and always think of me. That's our life. Perform prescribed duties, and always think of Krishna. And that way you're in the world, but not of the world. You're performing duties, but there's no absorption to the fruits of those activities and becoming the enjoyer of the fruits of those activities. That's material consciousness. It's karma, bondage, wanting, aspiring to be the enjoyer. No, we're very prone to it. It's kind of like the way that we live our lives. But Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, here Kapiladev is teaching another kind of life. You still do your duties. You do your everything. And your mind is on the glories of Krishna by hearing regularly in the company of sadhu, or like these Bhagavatam reading groups, hearing the glories of the Lord and carrying out your prescribed duties. Gradually, affinity for the Lord grows, and the affinity for being the enjoyer of all the temporary things slackens. It just happens. Just like when the sun rises, the darkness is dispelled. You have to make a separate endeavor. When the sun rises, the darkness is dispelled. So similarly, when the sun of Krishna arises in the heart, this tendency for being the enjoyer of the temporary, it disappears, or it gradually diminishes. This process, this is text 26 from this Ashtaka section. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. Now on the left is, what one's thoughts are about when one doesn't have control. Respect, fame, desire, health, wealth, me, myself, and I. We had this discussion over the weekend, Memorial Day weekend, on narcissism. And our modern culture facilitates it, or, it keeps us at the center instead of the opposite. Krishna's at the center. We're in the picture, but Krishna's at the center of the picture. So carrying on with this chapter, in this way one achieves my association in this very life. And it's not only us, but those who we interact with. There's this very nice story in Chaitanya Charitamrita, seated on that Vyasa-san there in Jagannath Puri is Lord Chaitanya. There is a group of devotees gathered around him, and over in the lower right corner, you see a dog. And that dog had gotten the association of some devotees who were coming to visit in Puri for Rath Yatra. And in the course of their travels, the person in charge of the group made sure the dog got his meal. Everybody got meal, but he didn't neglect the dog. So one day the dog disappeared. So he sent 10 men, go find the dog. They couldn't find him. So he was sad. When they got to Puri, he went in. You see him on the corner over here. He went to pay his respects to Lord Chaitanya, and much to his surprise, there was the dog. And Lord Chaitanya was ordering the dog, chant Hare Krishna. And the dog made the sound, Krishna. And so Lord Chaitanya threw him some coconut pulp. That's what he's got sticking in his mouth, is some coconut pulp. Then he did it again and did it again. And this person in charge of the pilgrims coming to Puri was shocked. So he paid his obeisances to the dog, because he had gotten such mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So you get the mercy of the Supreme Lord by getting the mercy of the devotee of the Lord. That's the teaching. Okay, carrying on. Here's a second question. There's something like 8 questions, and then we're done. What kind of bhakti can one do to attain Krishna easily? Or Kapiladev. This is Devahuti's question. It's responded to this way, or here's the question. What kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? Now this is her son. But she's asking questions for our benefit. And it's a nice painting of Krishna, isn't it? So here comes the answer. Bhakti that is not mixed with the modes. And it's Tivra Bhakti, very strong. Tivra Bhakti. Summarized, the mind's natural duty is to serve. When that service spirit is engaged in devotional service to the personality Godhead, in bold letters, without any motive, that's beyond the modes, that is far better even than salvation. Now, many people value and covet salvation, but salvation is kind of a negation thing. Not this, not this, not this. Neti, neti, neti. Not this, not this. But far more than the negation is the positive. Engaging everything in the service of the Supreme Lord without any expectation. Now that's a high goal, but that's what she's asking. What type of bhakti? Intense bhakti that doesn't have a material motive. It doesn't stop. It's not started by something material. It's not stopped by something material. That's the best. Here's the Sanskrit of that answer. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. Far out, huh? Now we have some botheration sometimes in our mind. Our mind is going rah, 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 something. Sometimes. Sometimes not. Most of the time something. So what to do? We have this worry, we have this stress, we have this anxiety, something. Someone insulted me, someone dear to me got hurt, and that the mind is having some problems. So the teaching that Kapila gives is no worries. If you engage in this type of bhakti, then not only the mind, the material mind, the material false ego, the whole subtle body covering the soul is dissolved. So when that's dissolved, what's left is that the spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, and spiritual ego. Wow. Wouldn't that be nice? No more material mind, no more false ego. There's only one method. He says it specifically. There isn't an alternative method. Other methods may lead to that method, but that's the one method only that can dissolve the material mind and material false ego. Just like fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. You have to think separately about, okay, stomach, do your thing. Digest the food. It happens. When there's fire in the stomach, it digests your food. If the fire is weak, then you get indigestion. But if the fire is strong, you digest your food. So if bhakti is strong, it dissolves, similarly, it dissolves the material mind and false ego. Wow. Make your bhakti strong and you don't have a material mind to bother you anymore. Stuff is still going on. You can receive the stuff that's going on, but it doesn't cause stress, anxiety, and anxiety disorders and all those things that they have these days. Abundantly, ever increasing. It's a mind that's out of control. Nice image that goes along. Paying obeisances. That's the subtle body that just is dissipated by the bhakti process. Questions 3 and 4. Well, you're teaching about bhakti. What about these other two, Gyan Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga? Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand the truth? In truth, that's sublime yoga. So he gives in 3 chapters Sankhya, starting with 26. It's really long. Very involved. Keep your dictionary by your side. And it gives an explanation of Sankhya. And then from Sankhya 26, it takes you very quickly into bhakti, meditation, and then bhakti. Kapila describes, chapter 26, the Purusha, that's Vishnu, the Supreme Person, and his material nature, Prakriti. And from that Prakriti, the Lord impregnates the living entities into the material nature simply by his glance. Mother Nature then produces varieties of children in all species of life. It's very involved, but that's chapter 26. Here's chapter 27. Kapila then describes how performing devotional service unto that Purusha with detachment, one becomes liberated from the control of material modes, even while embodied. Now, this is a further delineation of the subtle body and false ego become dissolved. It's drilling down and giving more details, how it works. But the modes of nature and our identification with material nature is a very strong force. It keeps us bewildered. But one can go beyond it. That's chapter 27. Chapter 28. In the Ashtanga process, the yogi meditates on the form of the Lord in the heart, beginning with the Lord's lotus feet. Lord Vishnu's feet shatter the mountain of sins within the heart. So if there's some contamination, you do this properly, and the reactions and even the tendency for further sin is taken away from the heart. It's not just, become slim and trim and flexible, have good health. It's for a much higher purpose, yoga system. Question number 5. She wants to hear more detail about the bhakti process. Sounds really good. My dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and the characteristic of the spirit, according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. That's what Sankhya is. Categories of matter, categories of spirit. We belong to the category of spirit. And over there is the categories of matter, which is not us. So now, I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Now, he's already described it. She's asking again, further elaboration. So that's what she gets. The process of devotional service. In this chapter 29, Kapila describes devotional service in various classes of bhakti, beginning, intermediate, and advanced, Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama bhakti. Characteristics of that pure bhakti, Uttam bhakti. What's it look like? The limbs or different aspects of bhakti process. The danger of making offenses while engaged in devotional practice. And again, in chapter 29, he describes pure devotional service, which spontaneously flows out of attraction for the Lord. In other words, there's devotional service in the modes, and devotional service that's free from the modes. We're quite familiar with devotional service in the modes. And we're getting a picture of what it's like when it's free from that contamination. A pure devotee sees the super soul in the hearts of all, and thus worships not only the Lord in the temple, but all living entities, by treating them with compassion, friendship, and respect. Nice painting. Super soul is situated everywhere. Question number 6. Samsmriti, the cycle of birth and death. She wants to know about that. It's one of the early questions in chapter 29, which gets answered in chapter 29, and then 30 and 31 and 32. My Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for the people in general, the continual process of birth and death, for by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world. Not a scare tactic, it's an education point. Just like you might say to your daughter, don't put your hand in fire. And as soon as you say that, she's looking at the fire, reaching. You know, if you touch the fire burns. It hurts. So knowledge is not just, it's not a fear tactic. Fire burns. And the involvement in Prakriti, with the mood of being the enjoyer of Prakriti, it burns. Dushparena analena cha. Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita. Anala is fire. Burns like fire. So nearing the end of the chapter, this is the answers. Description of Lord Kapila, by Lord Kapila, of adverse fruitive activities. I'm just going to touch on that. 31, instructions in the movements of the living entities and entanglements in fruitive activities. So this is bad stuff. If you don't do the good stuff, what's the bad stuff look like? Fruitive activity has problems. Chapter 30. Persons who neglect the Lord and do not serve him or follow his path to the spiritual world must travel the path to Yamaraja's hell after death. Being bitten by dogs and burned by fire on the way, they finally reach the destination where all the sinful are punished. Those are some hells. Not a nice place. I'm going to go quickly because of time. Again, chapter 30, he describes the movement of living entity from the womb of the mother and so forth and so on. It's not a pleasant, it's celebrated in one sense because, the mother is now pregnant and, we celebrate. The child isn't having a celebration. It's not comfortable. And then so the whole description, the movement of the living entity, chapter 30. And then taking birth, those who lead pious lives perform sacrifices to please the demigods and thus attain the heavenly planets, but they fall down to earth when their pious results are exhausted. That's chapter 32. Going quickly. What about the characteristics of time? That's another question she asks early in chapter 29. And it's really far out. There's a whole calculation of time by the atom. There's a whole chapter. Quickly. The smallest unit of time is the time it takes for the sun to cross one atom. That's a pretty small unit of time. And then so many of those makes the next unit of time, and so many of those makes and you get so many multiples, and you get a second. And then so many seconds makes, so forth and so on. You get years, and you get yugas, and you get 1,000 yuga cycles makes a day of Brahma, and so, half of Brahma's life is one prarartha, and the other half is the other prarartha, and so time expands. What does time do when it's around? It's a representation of Krishna's form, by whose influence people in general perform pious activities. So, please describe it. Eternal time factor has no beginning or end. It is the representation or representative of the personality of Godhead. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world. It also brings it into being. It carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another. Interesting, huh? It dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. So it's in detail described in this chapter. Very fascinating. chapter 33. This is the final chapter. The personality of Godhead said, "My dear mother, the path of self-realization, which I have already instructed to you, is very easy. You can execute this system without difficulty. And by following it, you shall very soon be liberated, even within the present body." That's encouraging. Devahuti glorifies, this is our last slide. Devahuti glorifies the process of Sankirtan Yagya. That's what's in the middle of this painting. Those are devotees coming out of a temple somewhere doing Sankirtan Yagya. And then over here are people surrounding somebody looking into a crystal ball with someone telling the mysteries of life. Over here is a political rally. There's something else going on. Oh, over on the left, on our left side of the screen, that's Demigod Worship. You know, some people that are doing mode of ignorance things, mode of passion things, mode of goodness things, and she's glorifying the Sankirtan process. It's, singing and congregationally chanting the holy name. She glorifies the Sankirtan Yagya, which give liberation in this life and eternal residence of the Lord's abode after death. It's a nice painting. And this is the petals from chapters 20 through 33 of what they talk about. So because of time, I'm not going to say what each of those chapters are doing. But the illustrations make it clear. Now, the illustration comes from one devotee in Vrindavan. She's a good teacher. And one of the things she teaches is Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto by canto, there's a whole study. And so she ended up producing a book to help people get a picture of what's in the Bhagavatam. That's where these paintings come from. And I know this devotee, she's been a devotee for as long as I have. And that's over 50 years. 52 years. She's she's a good teacher. Very absorbed. Very warm teacher. Students like her a lot. And she makes a good book to illustrate the Bhagavatam. So because of time, we've been going for over an hour and 25 minutes now. Whew, you're very patient. Your daughter kind of couldn't handle it, but you've all been attentive. So let's see if there's some discussion, comments or questions or something maybe you'd like to hear more about.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I'm thinking further about this bhakti dissolving subtle body. Is that a gradual process?
Oh, yeah.
And the other thought is, as it's depending on the degree of bhakti, it dissolves wherever subtle body.
It's the same question asked a different way.
Yeah, so my thought is, as we are going through this unsteady phases of bhakti, at times it feels as if I have actually lost that.
You feel lighter and you feel heavier. So it's same. You're just illustrating the same point. It's not a straight line; it's an up and down line.
So does that subtle body comes back?
Not that it doesn't. When it's dissolved, it's dissolved. Liberation is you don't come back.
I'm just appreciating one point. from the Canto 2 and Canto 3, that Lord Brahma, before taking up the service, seeking the, doing the tapasya of seeking purification and like empowerment from Krishna. So I'm seeing the thread here and just want to share appreciation.
Human form of life, the principle applied to us is human form of life has a lot of potential. It has the potential of achieving perfection. And it's one thing to do something with finesse. So maybe someone can sing nicely or dance nicely or cook nicely or this or that or the other thing, and you work on doing it nicely. And it's a whole other thing to reach perfection. And for those who wish to reach perfection, then it's important to qualify yourself for doing your services, not just, smoothly and nicely, but with higher consciousness. So, tapasya is important. Purposefully undergoing, because like say kids go to school. We all went to school. Collectively, how many hours of schooling? Sitting in this room? A ton. And for what purpose? For, achieving something. And that it's something that we wish to achieve is, for our benefit and our family's benefit and those things. Now, what about beyond this life? How much are we investing in that which is beyond this life? She got tired or you got tired? Oh, okay. Let's see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, then you do. Let's see how it goes. Our mischievous one back there. Maybe Amrita Kali can take her out. Go ahead.
This is from Jyotirmaya Mataji. Guru Maharaj, sorry if I have missed hearing this part. When Kardama Muni took up the service for procreation requested by his father Brahma, why did not the 4 Kumaras take it as a service? Also, do we have the choice to reject for the sake of service when our superiors request some service?
The answer is they had a disposition that was inspired by the personality of Godhead. And that's one. The answer to the second question is this one. Prabhupada was very specific. This is one area where you can decline. I want you to get married and have nice children. And if for such a request, one can decline. If the disposition is very strong. In other words, you have to have a proper disposition to be a suitable family person. You have to do your family duties. And supposing somebody doesn't want to do their family duties and they've got a family, that's a problem.
This is from Sanchari. Did Kardama Muni leave because he knew his departure would lead to this conversation between Kapiladev and Devahuti?
We don't have that. We have the understanding that he did to set an example. That's our understanding.
I think the second part, how would one justify his departure? So.
He was setting an example. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're done. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. First of all, it's been so wonderful seeing the whole
Big
flow.
picture.
Yes, because we do kind of get lost in the details of each chapter, which is also nice. But Maharaj, one thing, and as I was looking at this particular slide, the 27th chapter looks
Okay.
like Krishna is rescuing somebody. I was wondering if
What are you wondering?
it's. I mean, what was that? And
What was the topic that went along with 27? Is devotional service. So the Supreme Lord lifts up his devotee. That's all. Remember that Vishnu is reaching over and someone's drowning in the ocean and he's lifting? That's this one. Devotional service, the Lord picks you up.
This question is from Snehavalli Mataji. What was the purpose of Kardama Muni's gesture of taking Devahuti on that celestial plane and visiting the whole universe?
Well, there's no commentary from our acharyas that explains, so my response is going to be just intuitive. It's, what they've been doing for thousands of years is tapasya. And the purpose of the tapasya was to bear good praja. So the 9 daughters that are going to become assistants to the other sages to produce, the Prajapati sages, it's a different mood than the thousands of years of tapasya. So it's a mood of leaving that tapasya behind and entering into, now here's what the service that was asked of me, and now you're assisting me to produce good praja. So the mood of producing praja and the mood of austerities are different. So the one is to assist and prepare for the other. Now, that's my intuitive understanding. And she's the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. He's the emperor of the universe, not just this place. So, she's getting a tour of what her father's the emperor of. That's it? One more?
This is from Lingaraja Prabhu. In 323:7, he quotes the verse, Kardama Muni continued, I have achieved the blessings of the Lord in discharging my own religious life of austerity, meditation, and Krishna consciousness. Although you have not yet experienced these achievements, which are free from fear and lamentation, I shall offer them all to you because you are engaged in my service. Now just look at them. I'm giving you the transcendental vision to see how nice they are. So question is, can you please comment on the last part of this translation? What is this transcendental vision that Kardama Muni is giving to Devahuti?
Since it's not specified, it's hard to say. I mean, I'd like to look at the verse and the commentaries to respond properly. So send me this question and I'll respond to it separately after I look at the commentaries and contemplate. It's a very specific question, which is nice. I'd like to give a proper answer. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.